So, we're talking about the concept that the nefesh Bahamis, not the nefesh, whatever, we'll get to the nefesh Bahamis soon. As a general point, is the yetzer hara convinces a person that he should do that he's justified for the aveiros that he's done, and that he should do maybe more aveiros by saying that what he does is justified because it's human nature that we love ourselves, and the yetzer hara is able to latch onto that and it's able to convince us. We also discuss a little bit. We discussed details of that. We also discussed the maila that humans have over malachim, that there's a kiddush in what we do, that even though we're down here, even though we're in a physical world, etc., we're able to do avodah. The malachim, they do avodah, and they arguably do it better than us, but it doesn't have that much of a chiddush. So now we're going to discuss this concept, not the above concept, like not just this most recent concept of the advantage of people over malachim, although they're going to touch on things like that. But we're going to discuss the concept of the yetzer hara convincing us self-love, etc. We're going to touch on that a little bit more. Really, it's not understood from the outset how it's possible for the nefesh alikis to rule over the nefesh bahamis. The Hineksid, because it says Tzadik Rishon B'Ribah. The first one is right in his argument, in his fight. The first Mitzvah David and in Mitzvah David. There's three commentaries that you need to have whenever you're learning something in Nach. You need to have Rashi, and you need to have Mitzvah David and Mitzvah Tzin. They kind of go together, but they're essential. So Mitzvah David, one of the essential commentaries on Mishlei, writes, because when you have a judge per se, and one person comes in and gives his arguments right away, and the other person isn't there, then naturally the heart of the judge will lean towards the first party that gives him an argument, because there's no one else there to argue with it right away. It's going to have a little bit of time to percolate inside of him, and the judge will become more attuned to the argument of the first person that gave the argument. Halachically, this is why it's not fair. I don't think you mentioned it actually, but halachically, this is why a judge isn't allowed to hear an argument from one person while the other person isn't present, because he'll become naturally attuned to the argument of the first person. So the when two people that have different arguments come as one, the complaint of each one becomes weaker from the complaint of the other one. And when he's first, so he's able to make his words tastier. He's like he's able to give a taste of his words into the heart of the person hearing, and there's no one else to be opposite him to make his complaint, to make his argument weaker. This is also how it is with the nefesh alikis and the nefesh bahamis, because they're opposite in their concepts. The nefesh bahamis, now the animalistic soul is within a person from the beginning of his creation. From when does the evil inclination rule in a person? It says from the moment that he leaves the womb. And in Midrash Shava and Noach and Parshas Noach, the darshan, it says that the heart of man is bad from his childhood. Norav means childhood, but the darshans in the Midrash that it means from the time that he's aroused to leave from his mother's womb. So not just that when a person is a child, they have an evil inclination, but the moment that a person leaves the womb, they have an evil inclination. And the godly soul enters him when he is 13 years old in one day. Because on that day he becomes obligated in mitzvahs. As it says in the Midrash on the pasuk in Keheles, that it is better to have a son, a young person who is poor and wise than a king who is old and foolish. It's better to have a young poor wise person. This it says in the Midrash. This is referring to the yetzer. Why is he called a yeled? Because because he only becomes paired with a person from when he is 13 years old and older. And it's better than a king who is old and foolish. This refers to the yetzer hara. But lama is zaken. Why is he called a zaken? Because he's paired with him from his youth until he's old. This is also brought in Zayar Pashas Vayeshin. So we see that the yetzer hara has 13 year head start on the nefesh halikis to convince a person to do bad. And the same way that if you hear a complaint from one person, and the other end is Bar Plukta, the person that he's arguing with, is not there, you're going to be more attuned to his argument. So too, when you have a person, he has a nefesh halikis and he has a nefesh hamas. The nefesh hamas is there 13 years in advance. Aktamat Tanise, his complaint comes first. So how is it that the nefesh halikis can ever win against the nefesh hamas?
How do we not just have kids under the age of 13 just running riot?
I don't know if you've ever met kids under the age of 13, but I will tell you that kids under the age of 13
if my yetzer tov wasn't able to, thank God, in your circumstances, overcome a yetzer hara when it comes to an avera, I mean, it would be ridiculous. I don't understand how someone who's under the age of 13, if they don't have the yetzer tov, to be able to push that away.
The nefesh the parents very often try to push the kids in the right direction. That's really what it is. And there is a geschmack in Yiddishkeit. It's not that Yiddishkeit is like, I don't know, garbage. And then the yetzer hara tells you, hey, don't have the garbage. And the nefesh halikis comes and says, no, really the garbage is good for you. No. Yiddishkeit is taki geschmack. The nefesh hamas wants to have geschmack of things, but the yetzer hara isn't interested in geschmack of things. The yetzer hara is interested in a person doing bad. The yetzer hara is like a subset or like a sub, I don't know, not really subculture. It's a part, the nefesh hamas. However you want to say, part of the nefesh hamas, if you would. More complicated than that, but everything is. So when you have parents, they could teach a kid about Yiddishkeit. It's not that it's not shaykh. The yetzer hara is the only person. It's you have a person. A person is a human. A person has many inclinations, but ultimately a person is themselves calling the shots. I could feel an inclination to one way or another way, but ultimately I know that I'm the one calling the shots. Like we were talking about yesterday, people try to blame their averis on their passion, and it's not a valid complaint. We are ultimately who we are, regardless of our inclinations, regardless of our desires, whatever it is. So it's possible to have a kid that the parents just show him like these things in Yiddishkeit or like geschmack. Usually kids go for what's geschmack more than what's right. They don't have like that sense of I need to do this because it's the right thing to do, even though it doesn't give me short-term pleasure, whatever it is. These concepts are discussed in halacha as well. The fact that that a minor can't give things away or things like that, because ultimately it's easy for a kid to be confused and whatnot, and the person doesn't necessarily know. A kid doesn't necessarily know what's good for him, what's not good for him. There's a lot to be discussed. I looked at the clock for a second. I was like, we have another 15 minutes, so we're doing it. Isa, it's a good day to have half an hour, a little bit extra, because it's a little bit longer. Even though in the Gemara and in the Midrash it says that the soul, when was put into the person, this is maybe like another reason for what you're saying, but it says that the soul is put into a person from the moment that he is conceived. Either in the Manas which is the commentary on the Midrash. This is only that it's put into him. In a peyalas, it doesn't do anything until he's 13 years old. In Cain, so the nefesh hamas, the animalistic soul, his complaint comes first. This is also how it is with the physical body. All of the desires for eating and drinking and other pleasures they're very close to a child, and he's very used to them. And the nature, the habit of enjoying things is very rooted in the child. It's very deeply seated, if you will. And particularly when he is in an atmosphere that is drawn after physicality and corporeality. So all of the not good things, or the bad things, not just the not good, he says, the things which aren't good or the things which are bad, are he becomes they become habitual to him and they become part of his nature. As it says that nature that habit becomes nature or even a second nature. That it's extremely difficult to get away from them. The nefesh of the kiss is dying down. The nefesh of the kiss before he has a root in the child, it's not settled in it. So the animalistic soul is much stronger than the nefesh of the kiss. And this is why the nefesh of Bahamas is called an old king. Because besides for the fact that his complaint comes first and that he's ruling over the child for 13 years, because he's old, not just old in the sense that you say someone who's old like as an insult. He's old. He has this sagacity. What do you say? He has the wisdom that comes with age. He knows what he's doing. He's very good at his craft, and he's been doing it for a very long time. So he's a zakin, ragel. He's habituated to what he does. How to tempt humans, and to like try to pull them away. So they should be drawn after physicality and corporeality. And the godly soul, it's only a child compared to. I mean, he's not just saying that it's only a child compared to the nefesh Bahamas because it comes in 13 years later. But he's also poor in the eyes of a person. Because his entire concept is a concept of spirituality. And a person who's involved in physicality, is involved in the world, is involved in everything that goes on with the world, to him, spirituality seems to be poor. It seems to be lacking. Kochosh maybe. If so, the nefesh Bahamas is stronger than the nefesh of the kiss. So, if this is the case, it's very wondrous. How is it possible for the nefesh of the kiss to prevail over the nefesh of Bahamas? This is also how it is in regards to their roots. It's known that the source of the nefesh of Bahamas is from the world of Teiru. Let me finish the paragraph and then I'll get to it for a second. And the source of the godly soul is from the world of Tikkun. And Teiru comes before Tikkun. It says that these are the kings that ruled in Edom before there was a king in Israel. And this is a reference to the 7 kings of Torah. In Zion Malkin Kadmon de Torah, these are the 7 early kings of Torah, which they came before the world of Tikkun. And from all of this, it's apparently not understood how there is power in the nefesh of the kiss to prevail over the nefesh of Bahamas. So what does this mean that Teiru and Tikkun? So just to touch on it briefly, there's a concept of midas. For example, you have kindness. Kindness is a good midah. In Purim we have a lot of kindness in the Matanas Lavyenim and Shlaich Manas and all of the good things. So kindness is a virtue, but it's also something that needs to interact with other things. For example, it says, Kala Pishin Yad Nisrin. So the minhag is that whenever someone asks for tzedakah or anything like that on Purim, that anyone that sticks out their hand, you're supposed to give them. So, what happens if a person Takik just keeps on giving? Ultimately, he'll have nothing left. And he'll then either go hungry or he'll become the pauper himself. And there needs to be some level of restraint. And this is just one example. Technically, you could come back from that with the kindness of others, etc., etc. Another example, I think I mentioned this example before, is rain is very important for the world. It's ashpa, it comes from above, it's water, water is like mamish, like very much characterized as chesed. It causes things to grow, etc., etc. But if instead of having 12 inches of rain come over a week, you have 12 inches of rain that comes at once, a lot of people will die. It wouldn't be beneficial for the world at all, because things need to have restraint. So Hashem originally, he created the world, and everything is intentional. It's not like Hashem did this and it was a mistake and whatever. Everything is rooted in the world. He made Tohu so Tohu could break, and then we could have an nefesh v'hamas from Tohu. But Hashem created originally. There's the tzimtzum, and so after the tzimtzum, the nimshach and the kav, and you have the mekadven, and then the golem, and it goes down, etc., etc. A lot of fancy Kabbalistic terms, but ultimately, just for the purposes of this explanation of what Tohu is, a brief explanation of what Tohu is, there's a concept that Hashem made 10 spheres, and the 10 spheres were all came in an extremely intense way, and the 10 spheres weren't able to interact. And there are certain levels in which the 10 spheres could interact, because the closer they are to Hashem, the more bottled they are to Hashem. And even though they come in an intense way, but because they're so nullified to Hashem, they're able to interact regardless. Like Al Derech, what it says, Eisa Shalom V'Meimov, but that's, I'm already making references for no one, so whatever. But it's discussed very much in Beis, etc., about how you have different spheres and they're able to interact because when you go higher and higher, the more bittul that they have. But ultimately, you get to a point where you're far enough away from Hashem where the things aren't bottled. They are their own mitzias, and now they're coming into Kelim. They need to try to be revealed in the world in a concrete way. And it turns out that when you have spheres that they're in such an intense way, they're not able to be revealed in the world. So what happens is you have Al Derech Shveras HaKelim, that the vessels of the world, the spiritual vessels of the world, aren't able to hold these intense powers, and aren't able to hold these intense lights of the spheres. So you have Shveras HaKelim. And then it says that Al Derech, they fell into Tikkun. I don't know if Tikkun was waiting there, if Hashem stuck Tikkun underneath to catch them. I'm making a joke just to be fair. But the point is that this was intentional, an intentional breaking. And we say very often that the purpose of the creation is so you can have areas of Tohu and Kelim of Tikkun, because the vessels of this world is fit to be a derba tachtenim, and the point of the avodah that we do is to take very often we say the sparks of holiness. We say that these sparks of holiness fell from Tohu. We're trying to refine these sparks of holiness. So ultimately, this intense power, the intensity of the spheres, we're trying to be able to appreciate them in a world where you could say kaviyachol, that it's an olam for itself, that you're able to have a derba tachtenim, that it's taka tachtein, that it's taka the lowest level, that there's no level lower than it, and we should still have an appreciation of this intensity. The nefesh Bahamas has a measure of this intensity. It comes from Tohu. It's extremely charged, much more charged than the nefesh Elikis. The nefesh Elikis has a very good moral compass. The nefesh Bahamas has much more power. It's like the equivalent of an ox versus a human. You might say that the human has it's all the advantages of a human, but ultimately, if you try to put them in a fight, I think the ox is going to win. I mean, I think the Spanish did something like that. Usually, I think the ox wins. Even if you have a very talented human here, the ox always ends up winning at the end of the day. The human never kills the ox. The ox sometimes kills the human. So this is in brief the concept of Tohu, and we have I don't know. Let's try to make it. I thought I had 5 minutes after this. Anyhow, and you know, I know we have Seder. I need to finish Kabbanis. Anyhow, and you know, the hini be'emes and nefesh Elikis b'shoshi called them nefesh Bahamas. So really, this is not like a classic Chassidus twist in a sense. But you have the concept of spiritual levels being high. This is also something that relates to Purim and the Maimon and Karo. But really, the source of the nefesh Elikis, even though the nefesh Bahamas has more intensity, more power, etc., the nefesh Elikis, if you want to say the source of its source, is higher. As we explained before, the Seder Shalshalos, if you remember, we already had this twist really. The Seder Shalshalos, we said you have the Mamale, you have the more internal light, the Pimi, you have the more internal light, and you have the Makif, and that Yidden are supposed to receive from Pimi, and Goyim are supposed to receive from Makif, because they're more chutzaneous in the world. And we said that why is it that a Yid needs to receive an oil Primis? Because we said really the source of Primi is Primis Hamakif, and that's the source of the Primi that we have, and that really the Primis Hamakif is the highest. So Al Derech Zah, we have that. We said the Shalshos. We said that this that we say the Shalshos Shorshu, but the Mailam said the Shalshos B'chinas Primis Hamakif Dafka. Then it said the Shalshos the source of Seder Shalshos is from the premise of what's above Seder Shalshos, the makif that's above Seder Shalshos. This is also how it is in the level of Teyu and Tikkun. Tikkun Shersha Ba'atzmus in Seif L'maylim Shersha Teyu. Because Tikkun, the source in Atzmus of in Seif, is above the source of Teyu. This is why Yaakov was really the Becher. There's about to say we know that Yaakov and Esav very much correspond to Teyu and Tikkun. Esav was born first. This is analogous to the fact that the world of Teyu came before the world of Tikkun. This is only in a way of revelation. Aval be'emes Yaakov Becher, but really Yaakov is the Becher. Which Peter Shashbi Parshas told us the pasuk of Yadi Echaz Va'akev Esav, and as Rashi explains on the pasuk that Yaakov, it says that Yaakov's hand was holding onto the heel of Esav. Mashal l'shveferes niknas rishon yitzachrin. The mashal is like a tube that whatever you put into, you have a narrow tube and you have things to put into the tube. What you put in first will come out last because it's not able to wiggle around in the tube. When you put it in first, it comes out last. Yaakov was created from the first job. That is to say that in his source, Yaakov, which is the level of Tikkun, his source is above Esav in the level of Teyu. This is also how it is in Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Bahamas. The Nefesh Elikis shows the Ma'alim in Nefesh Bahamas that the Nefesh Elikis, its source is higher than the Nefesh Bahamas. And because of this, it's able to prevail over the animalistic soul due to the fact that it has source drawn to it from its earlier source. Because seeing as the source is higher than the Nefesh Bahamas, that causes that he's able to prevail over him. Even though the Nefesh Bahamas Taka comes and he has first dibs on the person. But nevertheless, after the fact that its source comes before the source of the Nefesh Bahamas, he has an ability to prevail over him. Any questions?
But I still am somewhat complex by if you don't have the godly soul within you, how are you able to have that? Like you have no tikkun in you. You have like a child before the age of 13. How do they know right from wrong? How do they? I mean, I know we talked about the parents, but if they don't have that inside of them,
children don't have. It's not about knowing right from wrong. It's about where your inclination is. Do you have an inclination within you inherently for something or not? A yid after the age of Bar Mitzvah has that taka. They have an inclination within them to do X, Y, and Z for being. And by the way, technically, again, the Nefesh Elikis is technically inside of you, so maybe that would also help to answer your question. It's not doing anything. It's not, but it's ultimately within. Maybe you could say that's how kids go on the Mesiras Nefesh, if it flares up, if it needs to, or something like that. But ultimately, the Nefesh Elikis isn't actively exerting control over a person. It's not actively giving his input into a person until the age of 13. The Nefesh Bahamas is giving the input. It's not to say that a person can't do good or can't know good or whatever it is. He doesn't have that inclination. It's an inclination thing.
But let's use the example. For one minute. I'm not even going to go 30 seconds. Let's use the example. On Bondi Road there's a chicken shop. Whenever I walk past it, I smell it, and I go, it smells good. Immediately,
is that thing with like the wishbone?
Probably. I don't look at it. I just you can smell it. As soon as I walk past it, my yetzer hara is like, wow, that smells really good. And my yetzer top goes, no, don't worry about it. You don't need it, and we keep it. With a child, what happens in that instance if the yetzer top's not able to push them away from you?
I was once on a field trip when I was a kid. And there's someone, I would say it wasn't a field trip, it was like a bowling trip, it was a camp or something like that. And in the I don't know, bowling alleys have like a kitchen or something like that, I don't know, they have like this sort of food. And there was a vending machine, and it was selling chocolate bars. And I saw a kid, he saw a chocolate bar, I said, wow, that chocolate bar looks good. And he bought the chocolate bar, and he ate it, and yeah, it wasn't really such a kosher chocolate bar, but he did it. Yeah, this is how it is. Sometimes your parents can really give it into you. When I was a kid, Kuntreis Umayan, I went to a camp that was a non-Lubavitcher camp. And so I'm not going to say the food that they served was safe, but it definitely wasn't Chol Yisrael. And it was a big challenge because they would give out all these ice creams to all these kids. And I was never having any of them. My parents would like try to buy ice cream and give it to them so they could give it to me, but it wasn't like a 24/7 thing. It was whatever, it was a challenge. And it was partially ingrained in me that this is what we do not eat Chol Sam. But it was my parents ingraining it in me. It wasn't that I had this natural sense of, this isn't like properly kosher, so I'm not gonna eat it. It was the fact that my parents built it into it. And ultimately it was, it's very gratifying to be able to fulfill a challenge or whatever it is. But it wasn't that I had this inclination, there's the Eibishter, and the Eibishter told me not to do kach kach. And so because I have a nefesh kiss, I'm gonna not do kach kach because the Eibishter said so. It wasn't an inclination that I had. I just had an nefesh Bahamas that wanted to eat ice cream. But yeah, kids do go out and they do things like that. This is what it is. It's discussed in Shulchan Aruch, in Simon Reish Mem Gimel, if I'm not mistaken. No, sorry, Shin Mem Gimel, in Erech Chaim, that sometimes you have a kid and you didn't have Erev before his bar mitzvah, and Taki is not chayav for it, but you should try to do tshuva anyway. Because even though you're not necessarily accountable, but things that you do in your youth, it gets built up to be to your detriment when you're older, and it's important to try to fix those things. But anyhow, yeah, the nefesh kiss doesn't give his complaint. He doesn't have a voice in the argument that goes on inside of a person. It's not to say that a person can't do good, but yeah, kids very often do things which aren't. When I was a kid, for sure, I did things that were chilul Shabbos. Not that I was high or anything like that. But I remember when I was like 3 or 4 years old writing on Shabbos. My parents were like, "What are you doing writing on Shabbos?" I said, "Yeah, but I want to write." "What do you mean?" So ultimately, I got to a point where I'm not writing on Shabbos, Baruch Hashem. But it's not to say that I had an inclination inside of me that the Eibishter doesn't want me to write on Shabbos, so I shouldn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.